Welcome to another expert interview. They all start the exact same way. I'm always excited for our guests. This is no exception. We get to talk about events, which is something that I love and I'm passionate about, but we get to take a different approach to it. So I'm so excited for today's guests. And as always, I let my guest introduce himself. So whichever one of you wants to jump in first, tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll start the questions.
I'll
Right,
jump
Angela.
in. Well, thanks. I'll jump in. My name is Angela York. I am the co-founder alongside Elyse with Event Advisors. I am from Southern California, born and raised, currently in Orange County. I started my career in an advisory firm, handling all the marketing and events, and did that for a couple of decades. Well, did that for a decade and then went off to consult for another 12 years. And in comes a pandemic. And Elyse and I were introduced by a mutual friend and colleague. And at that point, I realized that all the marketing and event implementation that I was doing was very tactical, very logistical. There wasn't any strategy to it. You were doing an event because it was a suggestion of your coach or your broker dealer, or you were giving one of those template marketing calendar fill in the box at the event, or you saw an advisor down the road doing a shred day and a Galentine's Day and thought, oh, I should do that. And while it's a very successful event for many, sometimes it's not necessarily the right event. And so when we met and we were talking about strategic event planning, which is Elyse's area of expertise, not from the financial services world, we developed event advisors to really hone in on strategic event planning for advisors and anyone in the FinServ space to deepen those client relationships.
So I'm Elyse Stoner. I currently sit just outside Philadelphia. I've been on a very long and wild journey across the United States. When you do the icebreaker of two truths and a lie, one of mine is I've lived in every time zone in the United States. I've been in a helicopter with Bart Simpson, and I'm one of three children. Well, so my lie is I've only lived in three of the four time zones in the United States. I have actually been in a helicopter with Bart Simpson. And I have a brother named Gary. Anyway, so I came from a world of sports and entertainment where everything we did was strategic. You knew who you were messaging, what you wanted them to do, how often you wanted them to do it. So I thought everybody did it that way. And then I learned that was not the case as I got invited to more events as in my adulthood. And I would look around the room and go like, well, why am I here? This is weird. Like, what's the point? This whole idea of strategic event planning and knowing who you want in the room and what you want them to do and what you want them to feel and what you want them to take away really was ingrained in me. And as I met Angela and had these conversations and recognized that not everybody did that, it became my mission to help change that. So here we are today with event advisors, trying to help folks in the financial services space stop thinking about ROI of their events and thinking about what we call return on the moment, the ROM of the event, because it's not transactional, it's about relationships.
Love that. Let me ask a question. Obviously, I'm wearing a shirt that says, "Who can I connect you with?" And Angela, what I heard you say, which I thought was fascinating, and I took this away in our first meeting too, is you were introduced by a friend, right? And that one introduction led to a business. Let's talk about that for a second. That's one example, but are there any other examples either of you have experience with one connection kind of opening a really interesting door for you?
Absolutely. So the person that Angela referred to was actually a neighbor of mine when I lived in Portland, Oregon. Again, I lived all over the place. And I was recognizing that there were a lot of parents, mostly moms, at our local elementary school who always started the conversation with, before I had kids, I did X, Y, and Z. So I basically created a networking group of moms related to this particular elementary school who had businesses, and it could be MLMs, it could be real estate, But one of them was a woman who was working in video. And so she became a friend of mine. And it turned out that she worked in video for financial services, and one of Angela's clients worked with her as a video expert. So you don't know who you know um, until you have those conversations.
I love that. I wanted to ask because it's, obviously it's a world we play in, and I knew, you just never know. And so I want people to hear that because your next business partner could be the next introduction, right? The next event you go to could lead to someone in your inner circle, the next client, the next partner. I want to hit
Absolutely.
back on something that's really important for you guys, and I want to make sure people heard this. Return on moment, ROM. So how do we define return on moment, especially in contrast to ROI, which is what people probably are used to hearing? So let's go down that path a little bit.
Okay. Um, as I mentioned, I would go to events and look around, and people would gauge success on I spent X and I made Y. And with events, you can't really do that because of the expenditures, right? And as you just mentioned, Devin, you never know what value of an event is going to be. And to forego that as a success measurement just really feels wrong to us. So instead of just focusing on the transaction, we believe that events are, for those of you who are watching, you see this picture of rocks in a stream behind us. Events are those rocks, and they affect the flow of the stream. And that stream can be your client journey, that could be your marketing journey. So you're not saying the ROI of that rock stunk because I didn't get a waterfall out of it. It was what's it doing to affect the stream and get you where you want to go. And that's the difference where, like I said, it's about relationships. It's not a transactional situation.
Talk to me about the other side of things. So, it may feel like advisors are just checking the box for client events. Why are their events typically failing? Where are they missing the mark?
I can speak to this. So advisors will typically fall into one of a couple categories. They've done events and they don't work. They know they need to do events, but they don't have the bandwidth or just don't know where to start. Or they've done events and stopped. No good reason why. They just stopped, got busy. And then they've done events, but they know they can do them better. So they always fall into one of those categories. And we hear a lot, and people just aren't showing, or I'm concerned, I'm afraid that they won't show, or I had an event and I only had a couple of people. So one of those, one of the places we start is creating an event, the actual event, the logistics, where it is, what the content is, needs to resonate with your ideal attendee and not just be a vision or something you like to do. You think you might, that everyone's interested in Social Security, but you're not 100% positive. You love to golf, but nobody else, likes to golf, but that's the only time they can get in front of you. So they go golfing with you. The examples can go on and on. So the very first place and the very first reason that a lot of events are not successful is because you're not targeting your event goals to your business goals and creating those logistics to tie into what your ideal attendee will really want, what really resonates with them.
Let's go down that path a little bit further. So give me some examples where you dove in with someone and you designed the event around that attendee, right? What did that result in? Was it a high-end dinner? Was it an experience at a ballpark? Like what did that lead to that aligned with them? Just so someone has examples.
Absolutely. I can I'll provide two examples, an educational and a social. So the first is an advisor that we worked with earlier this year in New Jersey who wanted to do an educational event. And we went through all those common topics and the wholesaler topics, life, long-term care and Social Security and Medicare. What do you think? And we asked him, well, was that of interest to your clients? And we proceeded to provide some questions to him to ask his clients what they would be interested in, giving them some suggestions and check all that apply. And there was an other box, or perhaps it was an idea, I can't quite remember, but it was about being prepared. It was around the time of the LA fires. And so that was on everybody's mind. And that by far had the most interest to be prepared in an emergency situation. So he listened, we listened, and created an event, an educational event, but there was not a financial spin to it or any sort of talk to that. We brought in 2 speakers, one from the New Jersey Emergency Preparedness Association, to speak about being prepared in an home emergency situation, and the resources were how to create a go bag. And then the other speaker was from AARP that spoke on cybersecurity and how to protect yourself and what to do in case of cybersecurity or fraud. So that really was, took the business goal to connect with the clients, took the event goal to educate, but listen to the clients, created the logistics around that. It was at a nice, country club type venue that was very convenient to the clients. And it was a happy hour. There was an area where everybody could network beforehand. Then they were able to go into the room where the session was. There were 50 people that RSVP'd and 49 attended. And with one no-show, and actually I don't even think it was a no-show, I think it was a babysitter issue. That speaks volumes that the content, the location, the time, made it at 6:30 so people had time to come in after work. It all appealed to them. So they came, and again, 50 people RSVP'd, 49 showed. So that is, it created a great return on the moment, a great value. The follow-up connected the content of the speakers and provided those resources for cybersecurity, fraud, theft, and creating that go bag. And it's still a topic of conversation when that firm is meeting with their clients. So that's the educational piece. I don't know if you have any questions around that. I can jump to the social one. So the social example is a book signing. We've been working with a lot of people that are writing books and having the book launch parties. And we came in alongside the book coach and talked about the book launch party. And our first question was, what's your goal? Why did you write the book? And what's your goal of the party? And these advisors, it was a pair, but they were a pair of advisors that wrote the book together, but they both were having separate launch parties because they have separate books of business and are in separate cities. So the one advisor was like, I want it to be fun and celebratory. So we dug into that and looked at the invitation, looked at the RSVP funnel, and made some suggestions for her to create videos and messages between the time they RSVP'd to the time they showed up to really exude that this is going to be fun and celebratory, and she's really looking forward to it. And then we worked with her and her photographer to create fun and celebratory shots on the photographer's shot list, and gave her some tips on her short speech. And she shared some photos with us, and there's one, and she was posting everybody. She has a smile this big, and you could just see it was fun and it was celebratory. And then even the thank you email and video, I can't remember if she did a video, was thank you for celebrating in this very fun and special event. So it just wove through, taking her goal to the event, to the experience. And we talk about this a lot, where it's not about you, Mr. or Miss Advisor, it's about the attendee and what's that attendee hat from the time that they're invited to the time they're well out the door. And so that created an amazing return on the moment.
Mm. Man, there's so much to unpack there. So let me highlight some stuff I heard because there were a couple things there I thought were really big takeaways for people. One, the survey. I think the survey is amazing for topic, right? Because it's so much alignment in what should we talk about. I think we're all so trapped in our industries. Sometimes you got to pick your head up and be like, well, what is my customer actually concerned with, right? And then let's just create content on that. So I love that. That was a takeaway. Touch points I thought was great, right? So really thinking through from the invite to nurturing all the way to the event to the follow-up from the event. What's it look like, feel like? What's the messaging? And so that was another good takeaway because I think people often it's like boom, invite, boom, event. I'm not sure what the follow-up is. And so really being thoughtful there feels like some people should slow down and think about it. And then the last one is, you mentioned kind of this formula of not just the content, but location and time, right? Geographically, what's convenient, parking wise to wherever your clients live. And then what time works to coordinate with dinners and kids and whatever else might be going on in that customer's life. So again, just want to reflect all that stuff so people could kind of grab a couple nuggets. I would go back and listen to that though, because there's a lot more, but those are some of the ones that showed up. And then 49 of 50 showing up. Like, I was clapping off screen for that. I mean, that's amazing. So other than the content alignment and location and time, are there any other secrets to getting people to show up?
I think it's depending on who the people are, because there's all kinds of tactics that you can do to grease the rails. For example, uh, like I said, in my previous life, I worked in the arena management world. And so that was, concerts, family shows, all that sort of stuff. Um, I won't totally date myself, but there was a certain like boy band that was out on tour and they targeted teenage girls. And most parents, you knew, didn't really want to spend money on the ticket or even be anywhere in the arena of all the screaming teenage girls. So we actually created a parent quiet room. Um, and there was a fee to it, but it was minimal because we knew that they were paying for their kids to come. Um, so we were accommodating them as much as their kids. So thinking about that is like what is a potential pain point that would prevent somebody from coming and solve for that ahead of time instead of tripping on it because that's probably going to happen anyway, but at least you could be thoughtful to say, how can I prevent this from happening?
Talk to me about feel. So I think this is something people miss, whether it's visual, smell, noise, music, whatever it is. How do you work with people on creating the right feel for the event they're trying to put on?
I mean, you touch on it. It's you're trying to create emotion, and emotion is influenced by our senses. And emotion is also influenced by what we talk about is the psychographics, right, of people. How do people see themselves? I see myself as a connector. I see myself as an expert. I see myself as a parent. I see myself as an adult child. So when you are planning an event and everything from strategizing that event through the production of things, think about how do you want that person to feel and what can you do um, to make sure you're pointing towards that. So, does it smell like cotton candy? Do people like cotton candy? Is it, um, we often joke that we don't get involved in like napkin colors and that piece of it. But if it's going to affect how somebody feels, then we absolutely do.
Love it. Are there core types of events? Like, is there a short checklist of, you kind of mentioned educational. Like, are there three or four types of events people should think about to kind of narrow down what kind of event they should put on?
There, yes and no. There are, but again, it's what your people want. So, like, you can do an educational event, but what are you educating about? Like, again, in our space, are you educating them about finances? Are you educating them about emergency preparedness? Are you educating them about architecture? Right. So all of those are very different, but they're still the mindset of our guests want to learn something. There's appreciation, and that is, again, can really run the gamut to small group dinners, large group dinners, golf outings, athletic events, all of those things where you're going, I just want my people to know that they mean something. Then there's sort of the hybrid ones, which we don't see as much in the financial services, but like the philanthropic ones, right? Like and we want to do good when we bring people together. So think about, is that a fundraising event? Is it, it could be a combination, like it's an appreciation event and we're collecting items to give to a nonprofit. So there's a lot of crossbreeding in that. So yes,
That's
absolutely.
yeah. No, that's great. It gives us just a little. I just wanted to think through because maybe they're stuck. Angela, kind of
Mhm.
reflecting back to what you said, they're stuck in a type of event that they're used to hosting. So maybe that'll plant some seeds. One thing I want to talk about is I heard time in one of the answers as like a blocker, right? I don't have the time to coordinate, the time to find, the time to manage, the time to invite. So is the key there to find the best outsourced partner? How else can we help alleviate the time as the company that's hosting?
I can jump in there. It really looks different for every advisory firm or wholesaler firm. If you happen to have, if you're a solopreneur, we have tools that the checklist to really help you understand all those little logistical items from, you know, the couple of different types of emails you should send out, the save the date, the invitation, the thank you for coming, sorry we missed you, to name tags. We're big proponents of name tags. And sometimes if you're trying to do everything plus your day job of being an advisor, you miss some of these important pieces. So we have checklists that can support. And if you have a team, a lot of times the small teams have two advisors and an admin who also handles ops. Outsourcing some of the planning. Sometimes our clients, in addition to us working with them on the strategic level, sometimes we roll up our sleeves, but sometimes they'll find at a venue, use the resources you have, outsource and use the resources you have. The event planner at the venue, they know a lot, and sometimes they're not going to offer, that they can do this and that. But if you ask, are you able to print the menu cards? Are you able to print some signage for us? Use those resources because that does help. And having a clear plan and writing everything out, being very organized, because event planning can take on a life of its own. And the last thing that you want to do is not give yourself enough time and think, oh, in a couple weeks, I want to host a client appreciation event, and think that you can, execute it without any, oh my gosh, I forgot this. Oh my gosh, nobody's coming. Give yourself at least 8 weeks, at least. And if you're doing a complicated educational event with many speakers and presentations and you have compliance, just a tip from having worked inside the offices and dealt with compliance, give yourself a few more weeks, because that is a whole other conversation that can integrate into event planning. So the tip is really give your team roles. You're by yourself, outsource and or use checklists to really know what you're doing and give yourself enough time.
Love it. That definitely gave me a couple more questions. So let's dive in on that. I want to talk about name tags and check-in. There's got to be some tips on the check-in because I can't be the only person who's been to an event and wanted to just poke my eyes out checking in, even at some small events. So, what advice do you have when it comes to check-in and welcoming people, and maybe bringing the name tags? Should they be printed or people filling them out? So, give me some best practices on the check-in process.
I think some best practices, like Angela said, lean into your venue, um, and do a walkthrough before your event. So you, again, put your hat on as the attendee. Is it easy to get from the parking lot to the front door? Do I need to do signage? Do I know when I walk in the front door where I'm going? Right? Like, think about all of those potential roadblocks, because the last thing you want to do is have your guests show up at your sign-in table miserable or angry or frustrated or any of those. Again, we're talking about emotions, right? Like, oh my God, that was so easy. I'm so glad to be here. So you want to, again, it's about greasing the rails, making sure that they're coming to you with a bright, smiley face. There should be a designated place for people to enter. Now, when we're dealing with financial advisor events, there usually has to be some sort of sign-in sheet from a compliance point of view. So you need to have that accessible and available. It could be an 8-foot table, it could be a bistro table, it needs to be someplace where they can at least lean on something to write their name, and name tags. We love name tags. We know a lot of people kind of feel like they're cheesy and icky. From a psychological point of view, people are their names, right? You like it when someone's like, Devin, oh my God, it's so good to see you, versus, hey, how you doing? So there should always be name tags. We prefer that they are pre-printed, and we even in our web-based planning Trello board we even have recommendations on what those should be. We like, like they're like plastic pockets and you put the card inside. We like the magnetic ones because then they don't put a hole in your shirt. And the sticky ones very rarely stick. And I don't know about you, but I don't have the best handwriting in the world. So if you gave me a sticky, right, he's laughing. He's like, okay, you gave me a sticky name badge to write my name on it. Like, I take my time because I know I have crappy handwriting, but let's face it, we've all been to those events where you're like, I'm sorry, your name is. Right. We don't want that. That's very, very uncomfortable. So, yes, we love name tags. We love sign in. And when you do like those plastic pockets, put like a basket or a bucket or something on that table towards the end of the evening so people know what to do with them. Because then you have that real weird, awkward, like, I've got this big plastic name tag thing that like I'm never going to use again, but it feels wasteful to to throw it away. Have some place for them to put it so that the firm can recycle it.
And
Love that. There's again,
yeah,
yeah, go for it.
I'll add to that as well. We can have a whole conversation on name tags and check in. But these are so many little details that are missed. And as Elise mentioned, if you set the expectations and you provide clear expectations, you're not going to end up having angry and frustrated guests. So they know where they're going. And then when they get there, having somebody greet them. Hi, Devin, so great to see you. Come on in. Elise is going to find your name tag. You can sign in the sign-in sheet. And then after you do that, you can walk in that door. That's a great way so they know what to do. And if there's a line, they're not going to be like, now I got to wait in line. And perhaps if there is a line, that greeter can say, Devin, so I'm sorry there's a little bit of a line, but Devin, I want you to meet Elise, who's also in line, and then maybe they can chat while they're waiting through the line. And another scenario, which we often have to do, is if you are, don't have all those people to be running all those roles, and I like to do this a lot, is when they come in, have a very clear table. And I put a sign that says, welcome, please find your name tag, sign in, and we'll meet you inside. And that's very clear if you can't have somebody man that check-in table. what to do. And then I always like to put blank cards with the logo. When you make your cards before they go in the plastic sleeves, you can put your logo on it. And I have blank ones in case it does happen, misspellings, and or they bring a guest that they didn't RSVP for. And so then and there's a Sharpie there. So all those little nuances. So then you guide them through that journey, and then they show up and they're ready for their welcome or their welcome drink or whatever it might be. But it's to alleviate all of those angst.
I love it. I love your Elise. I love that you joked about the name tag and you saw me laughing because I got to the point where with every company I'd start, I would just print a name badge that had my name printed on it with the logo, and I would just ignore whatever name badge they gave me because I'm like, look, I know my handwriting makes it seem like I should be a doctor, but I'm not. So
And I
I
don't
just
play one on TV either.
yeah, I don't. I don't. And so I love that. But again, I want people to realize there were so many little nuggets in there talking about the host, the greeting, the signage, the check-in, the ideas. There's so much to think through. But I want to go to the C word, right? We've talked compliance has come up twice. And I know for some financial advisors over the years, I've talked to them and they're like, I just can't do events. Like I can't do it. Compliance will just not let me do it. Or they'll only let me do this really hyper specific type, point this carrier a certain way. How the heck do we navigate compliance?
Well, I can speak generally to that. Every compliance department is different. You've met one, you've met one. So generally speaking, events should be approved. You will have to put every little piece of your communication through them for approval. So that looks like your save the dates, your email, your invitation. If you're doing presentations, it's the presentation plus the FINRA letter if they require that. But where we always recommend to start is ask your compliance department and then figure out how that plays into it. I have been doing this for well over 25 years, and I have never seen a compliance department say you cannot do an event. It may look a little different and it may be a little rigid and very, you have to fit into their box, either use their presentation or they have to attend something. It can be very rigid, but for the most part, as long as you're following their process on speakers and content, and some don't let you do a client appreciation event. I have heard of that. It only can be educational, but find out the rules and you should be able to do some sort of event. And then determining what type of, let's say that you can only do an educational event for compliance, which I think is a rarity, but I think it's out there. Then you ask your clients, I'm going to do an educational event, because then that opens the door for you to have an event that deepens your relationship with that client, whether it be in person or virtual. And on virtual events, I've heard you can't have a chat, you can't record it. There are those nuances, but if you know what the rules are, you should be able to do something.
I love that. Just reach out, ask the question. I like I said, talking to advisors over the years, I know I've heard I can't do it, I can't do it. Well, wait a second. Like, have you asked the question?
Right.
Talk to me about the follow-up. So we've kind of talked about the setup, we've talked about the event. What the heck happens after the event? So do you have some best practice and advice on how to make sure you carry the energy from the event forward?
Absolutely. The first tip is plan your follow-up while you're planning your event, because we know how much time and energy it takes to promote and produce that event. So when you get to follow-up, if you haven't made a plan while you're planning it, you're like, I'm done. Like I'm out. Um, and so we don't want that to happen. And when you plan your follow-up while you're planning your event, you ensure that you get the information that you need in your follow-up. So the example that Angela gave with our client where we did the emergency preparedness, we had to get their PowerPoint approved through the advisor's compliance. So we had access to the PowerPoint. And we went to the presenter and said, what's like one simple step that the person can take that's listed somewhere in your PowerPoint that they could do like the next day? And she was like, oh, here's some links to like the Red Cross. And here's a great link from the ASPCA on how to prepare for your pets. Well, guess what? That went in the follow up. We already had the email approved by compliance because we knew what we were putting in there, and it was ready to go the next day. So plan ahead, um, and don't be afraid to do, well, don't be afraid to do multiple follow ups. So, again, for that event, we did the like, here's the link to the SPCA. But then we had a photographer. So then we sent out some pictures like 3 or 4 days later, reminding people of the great moment that they shared, and just again trying to relive that space. Um, we also find that people want to do surveys. Well, you're telling me I need to ask my clients what events they want. I should survey them afterwards to find out how much they liked it. Um, we aren't opposed to that, but we want to make sure that we're asking useful questions that will provide useful data. Angela and I actually just did a virtual event, and one of the poll questions we gave was, of these three questions that you can ask in your follow-up, which one's going to give you the best data? And it was, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate the venue? The second is, would you bring a guest with you to the next event? And the third one was, of the wines that you tasted this evening, which one was your favorite? Okay, Devin, which one? Which one gives you the best data?
I mean, I'm going for wine all the time. No, just kidding.
And good, absolutely. And here's why. Because, okay, again, we're making an assumption that it was a wine tasting, right? Instead of just saying, did you like the wine, yes or no, you're getting valuable data on the person to say, I really like that cab, or I'm not a big cab person, but the Zin was pretty awesome. That's information that you can put into your database. It's information that you can use in a celebratory manner of like, here's your anniversary with the firm. Here's your holiday gift. Uh, it shows that you're listening and that you care. And that's a piece I think that a lot of people miss in their follow-up.
That's perfect. Let me go there because this was a question I was going to ask, and so that was a good tee up. You didn't know it, but it was. Let's talk gifting, swag, and takeaways. And I know there's a compliance component to this. We probably have to do the disclaimer of check with compliance to know what you can or can't do. But there's always a place that you can play here. Do you guys have recommendations for, branded notepads, branded pens? Should you have swag? Should you give gifts? Should you not? What's the approach there?
I'll give my answer and then I'll let Angela give hers. I'm not a huge branded swag person, um, unless it serves a purpose at the event. So if we're doing an educational event and people want to take notes, or you think that there's going to be some content that they're going to take notepads, pens, those are great. Um, we spoke at an event, and this coach was notorious for keeping the ballroom really cold. So the swag that they did was they gave like mittens and like a fleece blanket and a little box of tea. And I was like, I don't love that it's got their logo all over it, but that's pretty ingenious. Um, Usually I don't love the things with swag because let's face it, um, most of that stuff ends up in a recycling bin somewhere. And um, depending on your audience, a lot of people are very much into sustainability. And I think it doesn't always look great when it's like, oh, a stress ball. Okay. Um, so that's my take. Angela, what are your thoughts?
So I agree with everything you said. You don't want to, first of all, you don't want to spend the money and then it's going to be in a giveaway bag the next day. you want to, first of all, put yourself in the attendees, put the attendee hat on. What is useful? And is there a place for your logo or their initials or leaving it blank? And think of how you would feel if you received it. If you're doing a wine tasting, do you really want a wine glass with the firm's logo on it? Probably not. If it's a smaller event, maybe you have personalized monogrammed glasses, or maybe you choose something else, such as a journal that of the regions that you're tasting that evening. So really think through before logoed swag. There can be, I was just having this conversation the other day. I was at a conference and we were having the same conversation. And if it's something that's very high end, or a Yeti cup and your logo is smaller on the bottom, and it's something like, oh, that's really cool, and it's a something that is useful, then yes, you can do that. Think though about where your logo is. Does it need to be there? Is it giant? Is it subtle? I was at a conference and it was outdoors, and one of the booths had racks, and it was here in Southern California. It was very, very sunny and warm. And while they encouraged everybody to bring hats, they had strings of these really nice hats. And the rim around it was, how kind of, I don't know what you call the hat, on the rim, there was a ribbon and it had their logo, but it's removable and or flippable. So during the conference, everyone's running around with that because you're in that environment. But then it's a great hat that's useful. The logoed ribbon can be flipped, so then it's a black band, or removed completely. So that's something that is very purposeful. It was useful. It was branded while you're there, and then it's not going to end up in the recycle bag. So you really, if you're going to have a takeaway, think about what you're giving before you spend the money. Think about your attendee. Is it useful to them? And will they not want it because your logo is front and center? And I do have a piece on the compliance. You mentioned that at the beginning. So when you're doing an event, any giveaways, gifts, swag, think of it as part of your marketing planning. Versus, again, check with your compliance department, but you don't have to allocate for every hat and divide that by every person that attended and put it on your compliance gift log. A lot of times you can, if you're having a wine tasting dinner and you're gifting a bottle of wine to all the attendees, it's part of the venue expense and the event expense. But check,
Love
don't
it.
quote me on that.
Yeah, talk to compliance. Talk to me about this is going to be my last question unless we miss something, but talk to me about, are there any tools, software recommendations for ordering stuff, managing stuff, tracking, follow-up? I know some of that's going to be dictated by the firm and what they're using, but are there any best practices on tools, softwares?
Other than our own signature event system, which is a web-based Trello board, which Angela alluded to earlier. It's basically all the things that we have learned over the years that need to be considered when one is planning an event. Um, the rest is sort of up in the air, like an RSVP system, for example. Some people, if their compliance allow, they want to use Eventbrite, but some people have a CRM that has a whole event system in it. If it meets your needs, absolutely use it. Outside of the events, the advisor event space, I've used like Cvent and some of these other like bigger programs. I'm not sure how many of them are actually compliance approved. So, unless you're doing a 3,000 person multi-day event, a lot of that event tech registration stuff isn't really built for the smaller user. So, But that's also, again, where we help people if they say, I do want to host, if it's a big wholesaler and they're bringing all their advisors in and they're running multiple tracks and they want to have an app and all things like that's the work we do and help people finding the ones that work for them.
Love it. Talk to us, anyone who's watching this or listening, how can they connect with you guys? What link should we send them to? And, all these will be linked below. So give us some direction there.
So Angela and I are both very active on LinkedIn. We're also active in the ACES community, so you can find us there. But Elyse Stoner and Angela York, both individuals on LinkedIn, and Event Advisors has a business page on LinkedIn. Our webpage that talks a lot more about this return on the moment and the services that we offer. It's event-advisors with an O and an S, because there's two of us, .net is our webpage. And you can find all that information there. And then we talk about asking your clients, and we find oftentimes that people are not sure what that means or where to start. So there will be a link for an offer we call Getting Started. And there you can get our ebook on 6 client questions to ask for better events. And there's also an opportunity to meet with us. And then there's also an opportunity when you're like, I'm ready, let's go. My team needs help with this whole strategic thing. We have something for you for there too.
Awesome. Elyse, Angela, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. We covered all sorts of directions and ground and topics. If you can't find a nugget in this episode, you must not have been listening. So I appreciate both of you. Again, thank you so much for your time and knowledge.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.